So hello and welcome everybody. I'm joined by Birame Sock. Now Birame is pushing the boundaries of technology and she has over 2 decades of experience as a technologist, an entrepreneur and as an executive. Now, let's put it like this. She's the brains behind Shazam. Need I say more? Which revolutioned my life. I don't know if it changed yours. But anyway, after successful exits in the United States, Birame returned to her home country, Senegal. And there she launched Quelly. And that's a pioneering B2B wholesale sourcing marketplace. And it's aimed at showcasing and empowering African products at the global scale. So in 2022, to add to this rather impressive CV, Birame was nominated eTrade for Women Advocate by the United Nations. A job which is extremely important because she champions more gender equality in the digital space. So welcome to our program.
Thank
here
you.
At our interview at UNCTAD eWeek. So as I was saying, you were born in Senegal and you stayed and then went to the United States for university and studied at the University of Miami.
Yes.
Where you stayed on. And then you quickly took to entrepreneurship. And as I said, you launched several ventures, including Shazam, music recognition.
It was in partnership, but yes,
In
I like
partnership,
to clarify to make sure that those that were really also behind it get the credit, but yes.
Which goes to the importance of partnership, isn't it? I think that's one of the really resounding messages that's coming out here. But, you know, you've had an amazing journey so far and you're still so young.
Thank you. When you said the 20 years, I said, oh, goodness.
I won't tell you how long I've been a journalist. So can you share with us, though, some of the pivotal moments in your journey?
Wow. It's interesting when you ask that question. I think when I look at it, I never knew I was an entrepreneur. When I think about it, I just never knew what I really wanted to do and where I wanted to go and who I wanted to be. I think the first step for me, what really shaped me was already just this idea that my father actually worked for the UN, for UNICEF. And so we had the opportunity to travel as children and live in different countries. And so I think that already gave me this sense of looking at the entire world, adapting and seeing the differences between people and the different countries we lived in, and realizing that there's so much out there. Whatever you learn in one country, you go somewhere else and there's so much out there. So I was just a curious child. I always wanted to learn things. My father and my parent, both of my parents will tell you that I used to basically unscrew all of the VCR tapes. I'm not trying to age myself.
They must have liked that.
And yes, and just because I wanted to understand how it worked. When we had those little video games, I would open it up because I was curious to figure out how it worked. And so I think that was one of the main things, is just having that opportunity to discover. But then going to the United States for college, that was just another eye-opening for me, an eye-opener. It was, we didn't speak good English. So I had to learn English. I still remember the first time I had to use an ATM machine, was very confused and couldn't figure out how to make it work.
So how old were you around at that point?
I was 17 when I went to college. And I didn't even know that that computer science existed. I was good at math. And I started with the idea that I wanted to do broadcasting, which I really loved and still love. But then I was asked to go meet with the advisor, who then I asked, what can I do with math? And he said, well, you could go on and get a PhD and start teaching. I was just like, it doesn't feel like that's really where I want to go. And so then I spoke English with a very bad accent. And so he recognized the fact that I spoke French and said, you should go and meet the dean of the computer science department. He speaks French and maybe he can give you a little bit of an idea of what that is. And that's how I met him. And he invited me to his class. I came to his class, was the only woman. And that's how I was introduced to computer science.
Wow, that's amazing. So really curiosity and a chance meeting in some respects changed your life.
That's a great summary. Yes.
Wow. And so, you know, you were saying you were the only woman in the computer science class.
Yes.
And I imagine being a woman in technology is possibly getting easier. I don't know. But at the time must have been difficult. So was that an obstacle? And what other obstacles did you face in your journey?
Interesting. I mean, I don't even see it as an obstacle. For me, I was just wondering, why aren't this is again the curiosity part, why are there women in this class? And then trying to understand what was the difference between me as a woman and the other people in the class. And I was thinking, you know what? They're not smarter than me. I can do this. And so it became more of a challenge for myself. I think the second where I realized that being a woman was maybe holding me back from certain opportunities was when one of my first jobs, it was with a startup, and we were 4 developers at the time, and we had a big deal in Europe that was just signed that required that someone go and install and build a relationship with the customer. And my boss went to the 3 developers. He passed me. My desk was the first one, and asked each one of them if they would go, and they each had a reason why they couldn't go. So he passed and said, I'm going to have to hire someone. And I turned around and looked at him and said, what about me? And he said, but are you sure? You don't really know how the product was, because I was building mostly the websites. And I said, oh, I can learn. And he's like, okay, we can try that. So I give him credit for that. And I'm still in touch with him. And that's how I ended up going to Europe and working with a number of wireless operators, SFR, Belgacom, etc. And that's when I learned that there was more to just the code. Yeah. I really enjoyed communicating with the customers and working through that, but I had to prove myself. I didn't sleep. I was just like, I told him I could do this, so I have to do this. I didn't sleep. So I think that the challenge has always been having to work more to be able to be noticed, to be able to be recognized for what you do. And so moving to San Francisco with that same company, because we moved to San Francisco to raise money, when I finally started my first startup, fundraising was a whole other eye-opener in terms of, oh, you are a woman, you're different, and you are going to have to figure out how you're going to make it. The first question they would always ask me is, where's your tech team? And then they would tell me, we really, is this a company of features? So they would minimize what I was doing, even though it was music dedication, music recognition. I had deals with all the record labels. I had deals with the major wireless operators. I was in the US and Canada, but they still didn't see a company because they saw me. And so then a number of them would say, well, for you, we think you should try to get a CEO. And some people went as far as tell me that the CEO had to be male, had to be white, and had to be older than me. That's how specific they were. And anytime somebody would say that, I would just tune them off and be like, I will show you. Yeah. And that was so for me, it was not a barrier. I always took it in as fuel.
Yeah, it pushed you harder.
Yeah, I was just like, you are so wrong. I will prove you that you were wrong. And because maybe I always had to adapt to new environments and be, even moving from country to country in Africa, we were a minority in each of those countries, right? Being from Senegal. And so I had to learn how to just embrace that. I told myself, you're tall, you lived in Miami, they look at you, and the first assumption is, are you a model? And so I told myself, you know what, take advantage of it to get into the room. Yeah. So at least when I walked into the room and I left, they didn't forget me. Yeah. So that was at least something I could try to use to my advantage, which was as a way to get into the room. But then I knew I had just 2 minutes of my pitch. I had to switch my pitch around.
Yeah, but
2
also,
minutes to prove that I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, and that you weren't, you know, because I think if people did probably think, oh, okay, this is a model, she's this young woman, then you have to actually break all that down in 2 minutes.
Right. So in 2 minutes, I had to just go straight, very technical, and speak very deeply about the sector I was in, so that they would know that I knew what I was talking about, and then they would listen a little bit more.
And as you were saying, you know, you have traveled around the world, you're from Senegal. Do you think that the fact that you're also an African woman was a double blindside, was doubly difficult?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. People have a hard time. I even say to this day, I think some people have a hard time figuring out who I am. And I speak with other women that grew up in the same type of environment, and we all have that, a little bit of that challenge, because we have sort of this traditional side, and then we have this sort of modern side that we picked up when we moved as well. And we were always emancipated in terms of wanting to go to the US to study and wanting to get into fields that were dominated by men. But I think the challenge has been that people tend to like to do business with where there's less risk, and there's less risk in what you know. And when they meet you, they don't know who you are and how you are and why you react certain ways. And so you have to work through all of that. As soon as you speak an accent, they put you, they're not sure what box to put you in.
They perceive that there's less risk, I guess, but they're, you know, I guess your job has been to prove them otherwise.
Exactly.
So define Birame Sock then, because now we're going to move in and find out a bit more about Quelly, but we've been trying to, you know, define you. So define yourself for us.
I'm trying to figure it out myself. It's funny because I am a techie. I am a nerd. When I built my first 2 startups, primarily, I built everything in terms of the whole prototype. So I was programming 48 hours in front of the computer, listening to electronic music, and taking a shower was optional. You know, eating was optional. Sleep was just, okay, that's just a waste of time. After programming, it would take me 2-3 hours to become a human again. You know, because I was still stuck in my code trying to figure out the bug, etc. But at the same time, I like engaging with people because I like learning. I enjoy life. I love cooking, love food, love music. So I think getting into the space of digital media was a good summary for who I was. Because in college, when I would go see the advisors and they would say, what are you studying? And I said, broadcasting and computer science. Everybody would tell me, you need to pick. You can't do both. And so going into digital media, first going into building music applications for the mobile phone, I got my fix on the content side and the entertainment side, working with the record labels, etc. And then I had my fix on the technology side in terms of writing the code and building a technology company. And then I was on the board of a public company that acquired entertainment brands, American Idol. I got very involved in that. But from a technology perspective, that's when we came up with the term digital media, right? And I was just like, that's me. So I'm a confused child, you know, that belongs. It was funny. I was speaking with somebody during the event, and I was suggesting that it was difficult for me to actually really say where I was from, because I feel like I am just from where I'm happy. When I go to Senegal, where I truly feel I am from Senegal, I have a Senegalese passport. I never even got the U.S. passport because I wanted to keep my identity. But then I go there and they look at me and they say, you speak with an accent. Oh, you're too American. Oh, you're this, or you're that. So you know, you just go with the flow. And I think it's just the way it be. But I'm also a mother. And I love being a mother. I always wanted 10 children. But I ended up with one because I was just busy with my other kids, which were the companies. But I want to instill in her this idea of being a strong, confident woman, be who you are, but also understand how to navigate through life based on all of your differences, because the world is not always so kind. So you have to figure out where you find your happiness, but also how to conform a bit with the norms so that you're more accepted than pushed away. So,
and I think that advice to your daughter, I think that applies to everybody, and mostly young women kind of branching out in the world, not only tech. So let's look now at the birth of Quelly. Because you left a successful career in the United States. You returned back to Senegal 4 years ago.
Yes.
And as I was saying, Quelly is a B2B wholesaling sourcing marketplace.
That's correct.
What inspired you to leave what you knew, where you'd settled, where you'd set up your professional career, which was successful, and then take a leap into the semi-unknown? But I think it was unknown in the world of business.
It was completely unknown in the world of business, but also I didn't grow up there. So a bit unknown in terms of just having the support system is my mom, my brothers and sisters, right? Who each of them had moved back. And so we're figuring out at different points in time. I think what inspired me I didn't plan to move. I had been talking about it, as we all do. I mean, every African person that lives in the diaspora will tell you, one day I'm going home. But then you're like, so when? Just do it. But then you come up with all these reasons why it's not the right time. I was there on vacation. But then speaking with a friend, we were stuck at the airport. We started talking about the lack of visibility for made in Africa products and how, I'm just like, every time I cook out all these African meals, my friends really enjoy it. I love to entertain and introduce people to all our food, but I'm just like, but you can't find it. And I don't understand why. And that's in saying, you know what, I will stay. I will do this. And that's really how it started. And so I went back. I didn't even tell my family that I had decided to move. But I met with a few people in the ecosystem, and I realized that Senegal was actually moving forward. When it came to, we had initial incubators that had been put in place, like CITIC and Impact Hub. And so I was just like, okay, there is something happening here. The government had just launched DARE, which is the sort of the investment arm for the government, and they do from microloans to $200,000 in investments into startups. So I was thinking, you know what? I think this is a good place to be. Something's happening. It's that feeling that something's happening, and you just want to be part of it, and you don't know what it is, you don't know where you're going, but you want to be part of it. And I think that helped me feel comfortable that I could do it. But then I think it's just when you're an entrepreneur at the core, you have an idea and it starts here in your stomach. You feel it. It's a physical reaction to an idea. And you have no choice but to go through it. It's like as a woman, when you get pregnant, you have no choice but to go through labor at some point, right? So that's to me what it is. So I go through all the different challenges of starting a business and everything because I feel like I was chosen to bring it to life, and it's my responsibility.
So you've had this baby. So how's it going?
It's a baby that likes to cry, that's hungry all the time. And that wants to be a teenager, at 2 years old, Basically, that's the kind of baby we're dealing with. And so we work through it. I think I had to learn myself how to work in Senegal.
Yeah.
And how to mix the social dynamic with what I had learned from a business standpoint. And sometimes there's friction between the two.
Explain that to us.
So culturally, there's certain things that we are taught from the time we are a baby. We're taught not to speak about ourselves. We're taught not to speak too loud, especially in front of people that are older. We're taught to just respect and believe the person that's older, right? And so when you come into a business environment and you hire a lot of youth that are from there and that learned all of that, I had to actually teach the team how to introduce themselves, how to speak louder. Because at conference, when we're in the conference room at meetings, I couldn't hear anyone. And I was just like, you need to sit up and speak loud and speak with confidence. And I was told, well, you know, I was told not to speak that loud because it's disrespectful. I said, not in business. In business, it shows a lack of confidence in what you're saying, and therefore they will not buy your product. They will not buy whatever you are trying to get them, to convince them of. And so it was some work that needed to be done to get there. And then there are the things such as making the difference between the person and the company.
Okay.
And especially what I'm learning is people are interacting with me based on my background and maybe my successes on my last startups. But they don't realize that this is a new one that's completely disconnected from all of that and could fail. And that as an entrepreneur, it's a level of stress that I have to deal with.
Yeah.
In terms of, okay, you've set a standard for yourself.
Yeah.
And now you have to keep it going. But at the same time, you're starting from zero. You're learning everything again. Yes, you have advantages because people look at your background and maybe give you a little bit more credibility. But you're still figuring it out every day.
And isn't there, or I don't know, it's a question actually, do you feel a greater level of responsibility here because you're trying to bring more of Africa, more of something you really believe in to the global marketplace? Is it more personal?
So Quelly for me is a very interesting experience. It's very different from anything else I've done. I started trying to do it the way I did everything else, which was just the technology, building a B2B marketplace, building a beautiful platform, loving the code, loving everything, right? Oh, this cool feature, look how different it is. It's going to change the world. And then when it was time, this was during COVID, when it was time to figure out what we were going to sell, I didn't know what we were going to sell because when I saw the products, I said, oh no, these are not the products that the people I built the platform for are going to buy. Especially when we're talking about B2B, we're talking about businesses that have processes, that have integration, requirements, that have certification requirements, etc. So I looked at it all. I organized a workshop and to be able to first even know what sector I was going to start in because I couldn't find the data locally to know what was being exported the most or produced the most in a way that could be exported.
Yeah.
So by doing that workshop and just opening it up to all of the different, local producers, that's how I figured out most of them are in food, in cosmetics, and in fashion. So I said, okay, food and cosmetics is about the same standards. And then I offered to do a program. It was supposed to be 90 days where we were just going to identify what the gaps were between what they had and where they needed to be if we were going to sell to the retailers in the US. Those gaps, I thought, okay, we can just give them a report and they will fix it, and we'll get it done. It took a year where we had to do the work. I had to go and find a network of designers to be able to design the packaging because designing a brochure is very different than designing packaging because a lot of the standards are actually based on the information on the packaging. Get a research person to do pricing research, distribution strategy research, get a quality person to be able to go do all the lab testing, to be able to get the nutritional facts, do partnerships with GS1 to get the right barcodes. And so then I started building all of this, because when I would tell them this is what you need to do, they would say, we don't have the funding for this.
Oh.
We don't have the resources. We don't know where to find these resources, because I had to then get resources outside of Africa that had experience in this field if we wanted to move faster. And so it turned into an incubation program, right? Where we now are saying we want to do this work and we're going to have to do this work. It went all so far as to us buying the packaging and now doing the filling, packing, labeling. So what started as a technology business has turned into a whole value chain.
Okay, now I understand the whole baby analogy.
Thank you. So this is a very complex baby, but I think it's a baby that you need to figure out how to grow in stages. In saying, you know what, you are going through this first year, I'm only going to teach you how to speak, right? And we're going to get all of the standards. We're going to look good. The products are going to look good, and they're going to communicate and convey Africa and the richness of African products, etc. And then the next step is, so I'm going to test that. Then the next step is I'm now going to teach you how to do math. So now I'm going to figure out how I'm going to position these products internationally, do all the pricing, etc. And then now I am actually going to teach you business.
Are you at the business stage?
Sorry?
What stage are you at now?
Now we're at the business stage. So now we're at the stage. So we tested for a year with major retailers and hotels in Senegal. That was just a test. It went well. It went very fast. We learned a lot. We made all the mistakes we could make, and we took notes and figured out our process. Now we're starting to have those conversations with the major retailers in the US and getting the feedback and starting to sell. We're starting even testing on Amazon. And realizing that sometimes when you go for certain things on certain platforms, you click on the regions, Africa is missing. When you're entering certain ingredients, they're not listed in the drop down. So you're having to communicate with support to figure out how they can actually now make sure that they can intake these products that we have. And so this is all allowing us to learn while we still have this goal to launch this B2B marketplace, which is out there, but we believe that's going to be more of a discovery environment for retailers, for businesses to be able to discover quality made in Africa products in different sectors. So that's our goal.
Wow. Okay. That's probably not what you were thinking would happen when you were in the airport and you had that idea. So if the Birame of today was able to whisper in the ear of the Birame at the airport, what would you say? And you have 30 seconds before you evaporate.
I say, good luck, girl. That's my first reaction is good luck, girl. No, I mean, I don't know that I think about it in that way. Because I don't know that you know until you go through it, especially when you're trying to introduce something new with a different approach.
Okay, so let's turn it around. What's the most important lesson you've learned from this experience so far?
Be willing to pivot. If it's not working out, if you find there's a barrier, you need to be willing to pivot. When you're introducing something new or to a new market, you have to listen to what the market is telling you. You can't be stubborn. If I was stubborn about, no, it has to be 100% technology, I would have shut down by now.
So that's very good advice.
So, yes.
So, and if that wasn't enough, so in 2022, Birame was nominated UNCTAD's eTrade for Women Advocate.
Yeah.
So you obviously already had quite a lot on your plate at that point. Yeah. So what inspired you to embrace this role, and what difference do you want to make?
I've had to learn how to be okay with the fact that maybe there's not that many of me and that have gone and lived through the journey I had, with all of the blessings and opportunities I was given. I was given the opportunity to go to school by my father when that's not how it started, right? That's not the family I was from. Women were trained to be good housewives. It was considered to be a waste of money to send your child, if they were a girl, to college, because she was just going to end up getting married anyways, have kids, and not take advantage of her education. I was given the opportunity to be on the board of a public company worth over $1 billion by someone who just met me and said, I see something in you and I want to give you a chance. He was a billionaire, was not going to make money off of me, but wanted to give me a chance. That's been my luck. And so I had the opportunity to go as a programmer, to go speak with major customers and be the representative for the company. So even though he skipped me at the beginning, he recognized that in the end. So for me, those blessings and opportunities don't come every day. They come in different forms to everyone, that I believe, but we have to be open to seeing them. And so the question for me is, if I didn't have anyone else other than those people that helped me, who's helping those that didn't get a chance to leave? Who is speaking on their behalf? Who is building opportunities for them in the future? So if there's not that many of us, we need to be those people, and we need to be okay with it, and we need to make the time for it. Yes, it takes a lot of time to build your business. It's frustrating, etc. But we need to make the time to sit, and even if it's just be an inspiration, because we don't have enough of them. And if we have them, we've had so many women and entrepreneurs that have done amazing things, even in Africa. But the challenge has been that they've been wrapped up into their own lives and so many other challenges and cultural differences that say you don't talk about yourself. So how do we change that? How do we break that? Because how do you tell that little girl you can do it if they don't see that it's been done before?
So well, then what are the really important steps, if we can just narrow it down, that you think would be crucial for creating an environment, especially if we look into developing countries, that would allow women to have the space they deserve in this digital space and in the digital economy?
Yeah, I mean, I think what UNCTAD is doing just with the eTrade for Women program is it speaks to everything I just said, right? In terms of giving us the ability to be the voice for those that don't have the opportunity to have a seat at the table. But I think what that allows us to do as well is to make sure that our policymakers are a bit more aware of what's happening on the ground. The opportunity we've had to be able to speak at the table where you have all these dignitaries that are policymakers, but usually the policy comes to the person that it affects the most already done. And it comes and it's seen almost as a punishment versus a benefit versus something I should embrace. We're actually trying to figure out how to get around the policy. So having the ability to be part of the discussion during policy making or during the implementation phase, I think is what's going to change a lot. Building those public-private partnerships is very important for where we're going, because technology now is moving so fast. We have to keep up. And so why not speak to those that are actually changing it on a daily basis? Why not bringing them to the table? Because they already know where they're going. And so they can help with the policy to make sure that it's flexible enough, that it addresses the concerns at the public level, at the public policy level, but that it also takes into account the future and the flexibility it needs to provide, especially to the private sector, so they can do what they do best, which is innovate, create, execute, make it happen, do things for people that will give them the ability to then go on their own, not just coming in the form of aid. So I think these are all conversations that we're able to have, but then we're now pushing also for the action where we can work together to make it happen.
Okay, and so this is all extremely inspirational. And I'm going to ask you finally, just to give everybody we're with today in our virtual space a message maybe to help them if they're entrepreneurs but are feeling nervous. Maybe they're women and are not sure how to go. What's that message there that comes from your gut, as you were saying, when you're going to start a business?
I think the main thing is to just do it. Don't worry too much about what's going to happen, because plenty of things are going to happen. It's all going to come your way. And you have to tell yourself, if you can't do it, you will find that person that can help you get through it. It's not something that has to happen alone. You might be alone in being convinced as to the vision and where you're going, but you need to make sure you bring people along the way. And the people that might be there at the beginning might not be there in the middle of it, but that's okay. It's okay. Because you're still on a journey. It's an adventure. And when you go out on an adventure, you don't know what's going to happen. Just be prepared. And to do that, I think the biggest thing, especially as an engineer, programmer, etc., I love the agile methodology. It's about the iterative process. It's about testing and failing. Embrace that failure. Look at it and say, what did I learn from it? Okay, I'm moving on. Don't sit there and dwell. So I think it's just a question of try it. Start building it, testing it with your family, testing it with your friends, and then move on to the store in your neighborhood, move on to the, to the city. And that's how you grow. So the opportunities are out there. It's for you to go and find them, and for you to also be open so that when they come, you can recognize them.
Thank you so much, Birame. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.